So I'm gonna become the new member of the Wu-Tang Clan. Instead of a old dirty bastard, I want to be known as the old dirty Chinese restaurant. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Nightmare Road. I of course am one of your hosts, Decon BP. And what does BP stand for? You guys are probably wondering. It stands for Black Power. Um, and I am here. And I am here with my co-host, the purpley, the
like this.
apparently it's just Ash. There's no Oracle. There's nothing there. So just Ash.
Oh no, I didn't change it. Sorry.
what you get after you do a campfire, whatever the hell's left over. That's what she is. Anyway, in today's episode,
the leftovers.
Yeah, just and today's episode is on mimics and shapeshifters. And so
Yeah.
I was online.
Sorry, I had a cough.
I was online, not on America Online. Do you guys remember that? America Online? Like, boom, you've got mail.
Wow.
Yeah, and you get started right on the show. Like, I'm not on the show, on the internet, and it's like,
And then if somebody got on the phone, you were instantly kicked off.
yeah, and you're over there chatting, like just talking shit to somebody. Yeah, motherfucker, I'll fuck you up more. And then somebody gets on the phone, hello, and just like kicked off, and then you're like, damn it, that guy's gonna think that I ran away. Anyway.
No wonder our generation's so fucked up.
Well, you know what was fun was getting those discs in the mail. And you're like, well, I guess we got free internet for like a couple days. Because you get the disc in the mail. It's like, you have 1,000 hours, and it go really fast, and then you wait for the next disc to come in.
Nope.
What? No, what?
I did not know that existed.
Oh, it looks like we have a wealthy person here.
No!
For the ghetto population out there, they didn't have the money to have the internet on. What you would do is you would get America Online would send you a disc, right, with a free trial, and you got like 1,000 hours free, on the thing. So then you would put it in, and you start a free trial, and you had the internet for free. It lasts like a week, and then after that, it would tell you like you have 100 hours left, and that's when you knew you were fucked. And then if you were lucky, you'd get another disc in the mail, and you just swap it out and put that one in and get more hours. So it was like a promotional thing to try to get people to invest. And what's funny is I brought that up to so many people, and mostly everybody was like, yeah, I remember those discs, because they were, yeah, it was free internet because a lot of people couldn't afford it, so anyways, they're gold pants, Scrooge McDuck. So anyway, so
I was buying it. God damn it.
So yeah, anyway, so I was online, right?
Dad.
I've read a couple stories, by the way, out there of experiences that people have had with like shapeshifters and mimics and stuff. A lot of them were pretty cool. Some of them were bullshit, and I knew they were bullshit for a couple of reasons. Like, one was a really cool story, but it said something like, this happened when I'm gonna add the voices for it because it was just like on text. So I'm gonna say,
oh, please do.
It's like we were hunting one day, right? And it was hunting season. We were out there looking for some white-tailed deer, and then and we were lucky because this was our third deer of the day. It was me and my buddy. So I immediately knew the story was
an Idaho accent, because that's what that sounded like.
If I wanted to make it like an Idaho accent, I would kind of slow it down just a little bit and kind of like everybody sounded like they've been drinking a little bit. And I was like, oh shit, I'll meet you down at the creek. Anyway, so this person was talking about how they had, this is like their third deer of the day that they went out there and they shot and blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, all right, this doesn't make any sense, and I'll explain in a minute. So then, and then they're like, and it was nighttime and we were in the cover of night. My buddy went out, to go scout for more deer, and, and he's saying these things. And then instantly I was like, okay, a couple things. Number one, is when you get a tag for an animal, it's one per season. You're not allowed to just like you're not allowed, yeah, you're not allowed to just mount them. He's my third one of the day. Number two, as number two, the hunting time is over at sunset, so you have to start again the next day. You can't hunt in the dark, you know. So these people are like, we were out there, hiding in the blah blah blah, and at night. And I was like, okay, buddy. But anyway, the story was pretty cool. But I did find some stories that were more believable, and I have a story similar-ish. I just chalked it up to like maybe I was too tired, or maybe I was just seeing things. So when I was a kid, right? When I was a kid, this was in El Salvador. We were outside this. Me and my dad would be out there, in the nighttime, just kind of like walking around the property because you kind of had to keep it safe, right, from intruders and all that kind of stuff at night. So we're walking around, and they have what is called a pila. So it's like a place where you go and you wash dishes and you wash your clothes. And it was this little concrete structure, and it has like a little empty square there that you fill up with water. And then there's another spot. Yeah, and there's another spot where it's concrete and it has little ridges so that you can like wash your clothes, like and you grab a bowl with water from the little basin and you pour it onto the clothes, or that's how you do dishes, right? So anyway, so that's how it's done. And that's located like maybe, I want to say maybe 50 yards from the house. So
if you, mom washed all of your guys' clothes.
The what? Yeah.
That's how your mom washed everybody's clothes.
Yeah.
Oh, what a woman.
Well, it's not, that's how everybody did it. Also, you had no running water. Like there was only one time in the night where you can get water, and that was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. You turn on like your little faucet thing, and it would dribble. And the reason why is because this was located out in the country, and the only way for you to get water, and why that late at night, is because the water pressure would kick in finally when everybody in the town that's like an hour away was done using water. So then it's like, now that the city people are done using water, now you people can have water. So you had to sit there filling up this little thing because the water was dribbling, and you had to like make sure that, so a lot of times that's what we would spend our night doing. So anyway, so one time I was out there and I was waiting for my dad, right? And I'm out there and I was waiting, and I heard him, right? And he calls me. He's like, I'm going to use the nickname on here. He's like, Deacon. And I was like, yeah. He's like, Deacon, vámonos. And I was like, oh, okay. So he starts walking, and he's walking in the dark, and I'm following him, right? I'm like, I wonder where we're going. So we're walking, and then I noticed that he just kept going. He went past the pila, which to me was weird. I'm like, why are we doing this? So then I heard my dad behind me, and he's like, because he would whistle, like, he yelled, and I like turned around, and he was coming out of the house, and he's like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, okay. So I turned around, and I didn't, and I didn't know like how to say, but I was like, oh, I thought I saw you. And then he's like, And he goes, yeah, like, no, don't do that. He's like, just wait for me. Like, like, okay. And that was it. And so that's one experience that I had. And those kind of stories are actually very, very common. There's another story where these people went camping, right? And they went camping, and they were out there in the woods, and this lady had her kids with her, right? And the kid was like 10, the other one was like 5, and then the 10-year-old went and he called her. Like, this was at night. Like, he went to go. She assumed that he went to go pee or something, and she was like, "Mom, come here, quick!" She heard the voice, and she's like, "All right." And she starts walking, and she heard the same voice, "Mom, come here, quick!" And then she said that it sounded like her son, but it didn't sound like her son. Like, something was off because it sounded robotic. And
weird.
And it's like, "Mom, come here, quick!" And then she's like, walk, but now she's not sure. And she sees the silhouette of her son, like at the, like a little bit away by the trees. And he's just standing there. And he's just like, it looks like his lips are not moving at all. And she's just staring at her. And she said that she just heard, "Mom, come here, quick." The same tone that it had been. So then she just stopped. and she kind of started walking backwards, like back to like where she was, and she was walking, and then her mom and her son was like, "Mom, what are you doing?" And then she was like nothing. Let's just go inside the camper and let's just kind of hang out here.
Wow.
So then later, the next day, they went to their little down the little road, and they have like one of those little shacks where they sell like water and beverages and all those kind of things. And the guy had told her husband, he's like, yeah, like I told you yesterday, and then she's like, what is he talking about? And he's like, oh, I forgot to tell you. He said that that if you hear somebody call you into the woods, don't go, because it's like weird around here. And I guess that he didn't want to scare like the kids, and he said something like, yeah, there's birds that are really good at mimicking, people. So then, but she knew what he was talking about. She's like, yeah, like because I guess he didn't want to say like there's creatures out there that'll fucking kill you and they'll pretend to be somebody you love. So he was like, yeah, just so it's just
also birds that fucking mimic you though.
Yeah, but a bird that mimics you is also not going to look exactly like one of your kids and just stands there luring you into the dark. And I think mockingbirds and owls, the nocturnal animals tend to be the ones that are making noise at night. Other animals that like mimic don't really
That's
do
true.
So it's just so bizarre, like with mimics and mimic and shapeshifter. Sometimes people use them interchangeably, and to some people they're completely different things. So I was going to ask you, like, where do you stand on that argument?
When I think of a shapeshifter, I think something more of an animal, not something that's gonna
like
mimic a human.
Like a witch, like that turns into an animal.
I almost think of a skinwalker in a way, but I know that they're also different. Like, yeah, that's a skinwalker.
Well, like a shapeshifter turned into an animal.
Shapeshifters are the same thing.
So,
because that's what I'm imagining in my head.
All right, because I know some people were talking about how there's another story that I was gonna, after I asked you this question, and this person told a story that one time they were exploring, because they were, teenagers and they were, dumb. So they wanted excitement. So they went to go explore. And there was like this was like in Appalachia, and that, like in that region. And there was like a clearing. There was like a clearing, and there was like an old abandoned mansion. And what's interesting is in that region, there's a lot of abandoned big houses just like by the woods, like all the time. Like you can look it up online, like
our area sucks in that aspect.
The what?
Our area just sucks in that aspect.
What? There's like
a lot of abandoned, like you can't go walking in the woods and find an abandoned house around here. It's kind of lame.
Well, I mean, you can find like old homesteads. I mean, they're not mansions, but also it's not safe for you to walk in because a lot of the times, the cold will immediately like rot the wood because it's like frozen thaw. So in a lot of these places, like in the South,
it's so standing, it's fine.
The what? No, that's not true at all. That's misinformation.
That is true for myself. Do as he says, not as I do.
That's easy for you to say because you're like 15 pounds. You can walk like on a bridge of spaghetti and you'll be fine. So anyway, so this story, right? Teenagers, right? Yeah. Teenagers, a kid and a girl, and I think they had like another friend and his girl. They're like, let's go exploring. And it was this old like abandoned mansion. So they go in there and they see like somebody in the house, and then they're like, oh shit, like there's somebody in here, and then they just see this person kind of like walking, but then kind of like drop to like the hands and knees, and they're probably like, ooh, like what the hell? That's what we were planning on doing, so they're like hands and knees, and then they start like walking like into the dark area of this mansion, right? and they no longer hear like the slap of hands. They hear like the clank of like claws, like so then they're like, what the fuck? I could have sworn that there was a person here. Now there's just a dog, like here, and they're basically saying shit like, well, you probably saw something you did, basically saying like you're nuts, right? So they're like, let's just get out of here. It's kind of a weird vibe. So they leave, and on their way out, they're getting into their truck, and he says that the guy kind of like, the kid looks back, and as he looks back in the doorway, he just sees like this, what looks like a dirty, skinny teenage boy without a shirt just standing there in the doorway as they're leaving.
Screw that.
So at that point he said that, this is why I wanted to ask you like if they were the same thing. So the reason why I said this is the reason why he started going like into that area is because he could have sworn that he heard one of his friends like, come on, pussy, so he said it sounded just like his friend. So he starts
egging each other on.
Yeah, I don't know. So he's like, come on, pussy, So then he started like what?
Why are you guys like that?
Oh, I don't say that to anybody.
Just why are males like that? Like, why are you guys like, oh, he's not gonna do it. Oh, you should do it. Like, what? Just why?
I've never done that. And if somebody ever was like, oh, come on, pussy, you're like, well, you are what you eat, you dick. Anyway, so yeah, that's the reason why he started going in that direction, is because he heard his friends. So then he was talking about how he's heard of mimics, right? Like mimicking voices, right? And he's heard of shapeshifters, shape-shifting their form into like different things, people and all that kind of things. But in this instance, it was both things. So the question I was going to ask you is, do you think that they're interchangeable, right? Or if it's just like something, maybe some of them are like, well, I've already done the shape-shifting thing, might as well start mimicking people, But but what's crazy to me is the fact that this guy said that it took down like his friend's cadence immediately, and that's just something that his friend would say. So I wonder also, and this is a question that I have, because there's videos out there sometimes of you hearing somebody knock on the door, like dun 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 dun, let me in, like let me in, and then they're like, that's not my mom, that's not my family member. I wonder if they can kind of like read your thoughts and kind of take down the personality of like what they're looking for, because the fact that they just arrived at this place and this guy's like, come on, pussy, whatever, like his friend didn't say that at all while they were there, but that's something that his friend says, like to him.
I just had a thought.
What's your thought?
What if black-eyed kids are a form of shapeshifters?
I don't know if I would classify them as shapeshifters, because don't shapeshifters like take the form of something that or no, that might be a meme. I don't know. Black-eyed kids is different because they're more of, they have certain commands that they could only say, like, please let us inside. And then when you question that, they don't know what to say, and they just tend to disappear for like no reason.
Yeah, but what if like they shapeshift into something else, and that's why we think they disappear?
Like turn into like a fly or something?
Well, not even that. Like turn into like any sort of animal, or just, I don't know.
I also have a story
like
of somebody that let in the shapeshifter.
Why?
Because it was acting like a small sibling. So this story is from Colorado. So this guy's the what?
I just did a sound effect. Go ahead and skip over that and keep going.
Colorado. Dun, dun, dun. Actually, it should be like dun, ba, 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 ba. No. Anyway, so so this guy was at his parents' cabin, right? At his parents' cabin, it was him and his siblings, and for whatever reason, might have been like for a funeral or some shit. I don't know what they were doing. So they were there, and everybody went to bed, right? All of his siblings went to bed. This guy's a grown man. His siblings are like teenagers and children, right? So he says that he kind of like went around, make sure everybody was okay, and everybody was sleeping. And he said that he was just kind of like hanging out on this little, recliner. He had the fireplace going, and he's just hanging out. He's like, like just going on his phone. So then all of a sudden, he said that, he heard the, like on the door, and then he's like, what in the fuck, So he went and he grabbed his rifle, and he's like, yeah, who's there? And then, this kid's like, Charlie, it's cold. And then he's like, what the fuck? And then he was like thinking, like, I must have missed one, He said he must have missed one because he went to go check on his siblings, and he's like, well, so he went and he opened the door, and then he said that this person was just standing there, and he was confused, and he thought it's like maybe it was a park ranger, he said, or something, and he's like, is there a problem? I thought I heard somebody, and it's like, Charlie, it's me. He said it again, like to his face with a different thing, and then he said that what he remembers is this thing like putting his hands like on his face, and then all of a sudden he said that he just felt like what he saw, he says, was just like this thing's face that was kind of blurry. Like he couldn't like really fixate on his features. He just like couldn't see if there was any eyes. Then he said that all of a sudden he just felt like he was hit by the floor. And so this thing grabbed his face, and then I guess he just like blacked out and fell. And then he said that he woke up, and he was woken up by his teenage, like brother. And he was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what are you doing out here? Like what happened? Like, are you okay? Did you slip? Did you fall? And he was like kind of put things together. He's like, I don't fucking, there was no one in the house besides the siblings now. And he said that he just had this throbbing headache, and he like went, and then anyway, so that happened, and he didn't know like how to tell people, whether or not to tell people. And he just said that he just had like this pain, like a throbbing on the side of his face from when this thing put his hands on his face. And eventually his vision so eventually his vision started to blur, and like from one eye, and he's like, oh shit, he's like,
Which dog was that?
that's Roland. Anyway, so he's talking about how his eye was blurry, and he just like didn't feel right. His balance was off. So then he ended up going to the doctor, and the doctor said that when so they ended up doing like all kinds of like scans on his face, on his head. He had like a black mass like in his eye, and it was a tumor that was now growing, and it was like killing his eyesight. So they had to take out his eye. They had to take out his eye, and yeah, so now he's only has one eye. And he says that when they asked him like, what happened, and they said, this looks like, do you work like in a radiation field, like do you do something? He's like, no. And he says, this looks like somebody that was like radiated for years, that this tumor had grown. And then he's like, no, he said, I just had a CAT scan like less than a month ago, because yeah. So anyway, so the story is that whatever the hell this thing was, I guess like reached over and like grabbed like the back of his, and like basically like put his hand like on his eye, and then he just remembered whatever the fuck this was. So then after that, he says that every morning,
terrifying,
and it gets weirder. He says that every morning, he says that when he gets up in the morning and he's like getting ready and he's like brushing his teeth, he's doing all those things in the mirror. He says that if he closes this eye, even though he doesn't have this one, when he closes this eye, he can still see that face like in this eye, like that blurry face.
Shut up. I think I would just cry. I honestly think I would just start crying.
So, damn.
That's
so that
weird.
So I wonder, well, when you said black-eyed kids, that's also like interesting, because there was another story where a lady let in black-eyed kids. I don't know if you remember that story. She let them in the house because they were like, we're cold, whatever the fuck it is. And then, so then she goes to talk to them like, hey, do you guys want a sweater? And then they're no longer in her living room, right? And she's like, where the fuck did they go? They were upstairs in the bedroom with the husband as he was laying in bed. And he was laying in bed and he was sick. And he said that they were standing there by the bed. And he's like, who the fuck are these kids? And then they told him, they said,
Oh, yeah.
and they looked at him and they said, we came here because it's time for you to be collected, you know? And then, and all of a sudden he's like, what? And then they disappeared. And the smell of sulfur was like covered the whole room. So then he started getting really sick. And he had gone to the doctor to find out why was he so sick? Why was he, you know, this feels more like the flu, more than just the flu. And it's almost like, yeah, you're at stage 4 brain cancer. You know?
Can you imagine?
So, and they said that it was almost like it was in his blood, you know, like the you know, this. So
wow. That's freaking wild.
And then people were asking the questions like on this phone. This is a phone I saw a long time ago, and I just re-listened to a story like that. And they asked him like, "Well, were you not sick before?" And he says, "No." And he says, "Well, how do you know?" He says, "Well, because," he says, that he also had a CAT scan because he hit his head and he wanted to make sure he didn't have like a concussion or something because he works as a handyman. So he fell off a ladder. So from there to getting your head scanned, and all of a sudden they go and they check you, and all of a sudden you have stage 4, which is like the end almost, you know, brain cat, like what the fuck? And the whole concept of you came here to be collected, you know? So there's that, I guess there's that moment of illness, right? It's almost like these things are like bringers of death and disease. I don't know.
Maybe.
Because isn't it weird that you get two stories of somebody letting something like this in, and the result is not like he mauled me to death and then he started strangling me with my own intestines. Instead is they blacked out and all of a sudden they were very sick, or there was something very wrong with them. You know?
This is why they say a lot of things that you see in horror movies aren't real, like being strangled with your intestines. Just doesn't happen very often.
I got that from a Dr. Seuss book. I'm kidding. So it's just so bizarre because there's a lot of those videos out there, and some of them I look at them like, yeah, this could be fake or this may not be fake, but it's just so like you never know, right? Like there's a video in this takes place in Mexico where this guy he's doing like a video chat.
Oh God!
And he's doing a video chat with somebody whom I don't think he was supposed to be, because he's talking like kind of talking dirty, you know, like we'll see, and they're like talking dirty, like their face, right? They're recording, like saying these things, and
sex.
all of a sudden you hear "Papa, Papa" from outside the door, "Papa, Papa," like from outside of his door, and then he like gets up and he's like, wait, he's like, hold on, and then he's like walking with this phone. And it shows him like kind of like look over. You don't see the bed. You do see like little feet. Like his daughter is sleeping, but he can hear her like outside the door. Papa. And she's like, Dad. And then she says, déjame pasar. Like, let me in. Let me go inside. Let me go. And then he's like, like, oh, go fuck yourself. Like, I'm not letting you in, whatever the hell you are. So he's, and
Yourself.
So anyway, so the lady on the phone is asking like, who is that? Like, who is that? And he says, that's not. And he's like, did you leave your kid outside? ¿Dejaste tu hija afuera? And he's like, no. He's like, no, she's right there, you know. So then he basically tells her, like, he tells the thing outside, like, fuck off, you're not coming inside. So then it's like a silhouette. Like, so these type of have you ever seen that glass that's kind of like frosted and you can't see through it? They're kind of used for bathrooms. They're used for, the style is called frosted.
My front door?
Kind of, I guess.
My front door has that. It's frosted and then it has the stupid flower shit.
Oh, okay. So there's like a little square, right? And places like that, you don't want a big one because somebody will just smash in and get in your house. So they're small and the door's made out of metal and it has this little thing. So he basically tells her like, yeah, go fuck yourself. And then all of a sudden you see like the silhouette of something just like grow, like get big, and it just walks off. Like you just hear it like walking off. So then he was like, and then they're both kind of like sitting there on the phone, like you see the picture of the not the video of the little lady that he's talking to on the phone, and they're both just like, what the fuck was that? You know? And then the girl comes to the conclusion of it's una bruja, it's a witch. It was a witch. And then he was like, I don't know. He's like, hey, I'll call you tomorrow. Whatever the hell it was.
Call you tomorrow.
But it's just not a thing that just happens here. It happens all over the world. And to me, it's just so interesting how it's one of those, they want permission, right, to get in. And a lot of people call it almost like vampiric, almost like you gotta invite this thing in. Damn skinwalkers, huh? So anyway, sorry guys, technical difficulties there. So it's almost like I was saying earlier, it's almost like the vampire lore. How it's like they gotta be invited in. It seems like all these entities, they want to be left in. They're not just gonna open the door. At least not what I've seen.
I don't feel like shapeshifters and mimics are like that though. I don't feel like they have to be let in.
Well, I've seen like so many different unless you're outside in the woods. But generally, like when you're in a house, they like knock on your door. Like, hey.
Not always.
Unless you have something, and maybe that's the difference between a mimic and a shapeshifter. Maybe the shapeshifter has to be let in, and a mimic doesn't. Because there's also. You had a story, don't you?
That's why I was saying I don't think that's always the case, because I do have a story.
All right, tell the story real quick for this audience.
Okay, so okay, when I texted you, I said house. It wasn't my house in Oregon. This was my apartment. This was the first place I lived in. No, second. Just kidding. Second place I lived in Oregon. So it was this really old building in Coos Bay. You could tell it was probably built like when Coos Bay was first built, because it was one of those buildings where it had, those sliding doors, those hidden doors inside the wall.
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of the apartments had those. The apartments also had like Murphy beds, the beds that like
fold up,
and you could like flip the door so it was completely hidden. There was no elevator. There was fucking I think there was 4 or 5 floors in this building. Luckily, I had an apartment on the first floor. I got very lucky. It was like the first one. Anyways, so I'm going to say this in the beginning. This was back in my party days. This was when Ash was having some fun. So it could be because of that, but it also could be something else. So I'm going to say that now.
What was it?
So this night, I was home by myself. The guy that I was dating at the time, he was at one of our friends' house doing God knows what. I had a procedure done a few days before, so I was resting. Okay.
What was the procedure?
I am not saying that on here. So, anyways, I woke up. I think it was probably, if I remember right, it was somewhere between midnight and 3, because he came home about 2 or something like that. I can't remember exactly. This was like 15 years ago. So, our room, when you walk into this apartment, you walk into like this little tiny entryway that was like almost like a hallway. You had 4 doors you could go in. One was the bathroom. One was the living room that was straight ahead. There was another one straight ahead that went to the bedroom, and another one that went to the closet. So our bedroom and the living room, if you open not the Murphy bed, if you open the inner doors, it was one big room. So it had those sliding doors.
Yeah.
So I was in our room, obviously, and I woke up because I thought I heard, we'll call him Bob for sake of the story. I thought I heard Bob come home.
Let's call him Bobby.
No, we're not going to say Bobby, because I have an old high school friend, Bobby. So anyway, thought I heard Bob come home, and I walked out, and this was back when I dressed more of a scene and emo type style. I still had long dark hair, but I also like did the whole poof shit, you know?
Yeah, like a Mexican.
Yes. Wow. No, it was the scene emo girl style. Anyways, that was
Hey,
how I.
fucker, it's a la shy, eh?
Wow. Anyways, so obviously I was in bed. My hair wasn't done, but when I walked out, when you walk out into the living room and you slide open the doors, if you look straight ahead, there was a small kitchen that was probably like the size of my bathroom. Okay, very tiny kitchen. So in the doorway of the kitchen, there was someone standing there with their back towards me, but she had my exact hair, my exact build. So we were kind of the party apartment. So I was thinking it was just someone coming by, and I was like, who are you? Like, Bob's not here. Why are you in my apartment? So she then said, Bob, are you home? My exact same voice. I shit you not. She turned around and I blinked and she was gone. But I remember, so my eyes are a distinct hazel color. They're not any other color. When you look at my eyes, they are hazel. Her eyes were like almost black.
Like my
and
eyes?
Then Bob walked in the door.
What'd he say?
He just said, what are you doing up?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he didn't see anything or see anybody, and he thought I was high or something and thought I was out of my mind. Which is why I said, this was back in my party days, so, I could have been seeing shit, but who knows?
But unlikely. Huh. All right, that's interesting. Like,
yeah, it was really weird. But this building, honestly, would have freaked you the fuck out.
Oh, me?
Yes, it was
Why?
a creepy building. It was, when you walked in, it was super dark. It had just like the wraparound stairs that went all the way up to the top floor. There was also a roof part, and there was 2 apartments on the roof.
Oh, okay.
If you go down into the basement of this building, that's where like the laundry room was, but it was seriously like a dungeon type.
Yeah, I've seen places like that.
This building on the planet. I can't believe I went down to that laundry room by myself.
Is it like the community laundry room?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was that kind of apartment building.
Yeah, I lived in places like that in Los Angeles.
No, never again. It was only like $600 a month.
Yeah, well, fuck. Yeah, but that was also 15 years ago.
Exactly. I bet the apartment I had is probably at least 900.
Or it burned down from like a meth fire.
No, that building is still there.
That was a joke.
Well,
all right. So I got one more story, and then we gotta cut it. So this is a story that you guys can actually look up, and it's from Billy Corgan. He's the front man from the Smashing Pumpkins.
Oh.
And he was on the Howard Stern show, and they're like, "Hey, what's the wildest experience?" And then he talked about how he witnessed somebody shapeshift in front of him. And he didn't even say like into an animal, it's like into a weird creature. And then they're like, "What the hell?" And then he was like, "Yeah, So they're like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, this happened." And he says, "Well, who was it?" He's like, "I can't tell you who it was." He says, "But it was somebody that I was seeing at the time." And Howard Stern's like, "Whoa, whatever." So then he was like, "Were you high or whatever?" And he says, "No." And then he told the story that it happened a second time. Same person. He says, we were like in bed, and he's like, wait a minute. He says, "Were you making love with this person?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he says, "We were both naked." He says, "And I saw her." He said, "Stand up." And she looked at me, and she morphed into a creature and just like left the room. And now, this is an old interview, and they were kind of like, "What the fuck?" And then they're like, "Are you like, is this like a joke?" And he says, "No, this actually happened." So it's now been, I don't fucking know, like 20 years since this interview was said. And they still ask him about it, and he goes, "Yeah." And he says, "Are you still like seeing this person?" He says, "No, we're not together, but she's around. You know,
She's around.
she's around." And he never revealed who it was. And to me, when you're willing to go out and say something like this right out of the blue, I don't think he's making it. Like when I saw him, I was kind of like trying to read to see if he was like making shit up, but he was sincere when he was talking. His facial cues and the way that he positioned his body, everything seemed legit, like he was relaxed. And he had like a couple drinks, so like those kind of things just kind of like flow out of you more naturally. So it was just so interesting watching this. And then I was like, how did he meet this? Do you think this person came to like one of the concerts for the Smashing Pumpkins, and they came backstage, and she was probably like, looked a certain way, like I don't know, right? But then to me, I think two things.
And have a way.
But so to me, a lot of these type of creatures, some of them may not even, the way he described it, it was not even human. So I wonder if like it's originally not human, and it just kind of like, like went into like his mind, and it's like, I'm gonna turn into whatever he finds attractive. So like more. The what?
What if it was an alien?
Probably an illegal alien. So.
Oh my God. No.
Or something
like space alien.
A space alien? I don't know about that. I don't believe in aliens.
What?
I don't believe in aliens.
How do you not believe in aliens?
What do you mean? I just don't believe in them.
How do you believe that we are the only living things in the whole universe? Are you insane? We're gonna have a talk.
I strictly believe that yeah, we're alone.
Nope, we are gonna have a very long discussion.
I believe that. I think that we're
alone
out there. Aliens like ET, get the fuck out of here.
Stop it. Have you not seen Sean's posts?
Have I?
Well, before I left Facebook.
Well, I mean, this has been like one of those topics that we've had back and forth for years. So no, I don't care what Sean writes. You hear that, Ghost Man? I don't give a fuck what you think. I Sean, don't.
We need you to come back on, and we're gonna do an entire episode.
I don't want him back on.
We're doing it.
So I don't buy it. I don't believe that there's aliens out there. Anyway, I think that it's more. It could be some type of a creature out there, maybe an elemental, maybe just something that, it's like, all right, I'm going to morph into what he finds attractive, and I just feed off of him, because.
That's almost like a succubus.
Almost. But you just never know. So that's the story that he told, and that's the last story. So we're going to have to close up the show.
Gross.
Yeah, so this episode was brought to you by Dreamscape Chronicles. So if you guys want something interesting, something analytical, something almost historical in some episodes, head on over to Dreamscape Chronicles on Spotify. And if you want to meet two crazy sisters that go from everything to the paranormal to true crime, render the darkness.
Say you do this part, not me.
So yeah, cool gals, fucking awesome, like great personality, and they're both kind of like, what do you say? They're easy to get along with because they're very down to earth.
They're weird like us.
Yeah, fucking maybe weird like you. I'm not weird, you're weird. So also brought to you by Paranormal Nate Static Voices, and is downloading the paranormal erotica for shapeshifters and pumpkin intimacy. So yeah, Nate, so check out his stuff over at Paranormal Unveiled, so you guys can check his stuff out. We're gonna put in a link in the description for his book. It's a great book. I'm getting an autographed book in the mail, so go ahead and get the book. Anyway, so what else? What?
I'm just kidding.
And Shadow Nation podcast over there on My Haunted Backroads with the man, the myth, the legend, Sean Burris. There's no such thing as aliens.
Yes, there is.
So check him out. And also TeePublic. Get yourself a mug. Get yourself a pair of socks. Get yourself
alien socks.
I don't make that shit. So yeah, just go ahead and get something cool. So that's about it, guys. So remember to always look both ways, especially if you're gonna bang a shapeshifter
or cross a spacecraft. I'm pressing end recording. Bear with me.